I wrote a 25-page paper on don't pledge your allegiance to a country. You're actually one of the first people that's really affirmed that.
It's absolutely unbiblical.
I appreciate that.
Pledging your allegiance to a nation state is totally unbiblical. Completely contrary everything the apostles did.
I agree. So hey, I appreciate it, man.
Yeah.
I love watching you stuff.
Right, fifth time now. Fifth time you're fool. Listen.
Can you give me time to speak?
Because I know what you're going to say.
You just called me a fool.
Yes, because you
I'm
are.
giving you the opportunity to answer.
I'm trying to answer,
Why
but
you
you're
are
not
following a prophet that he's like admitted himself that he thinks he's demon possessed? Why are you following a prophet? Why are you following a
Speaker's Corner is an exception to that. It is a quirk of our society. It isn't the norm. So the church needs to, those that are evangelistically minded need to band together and adapt their style of evangelism appropriate to the culture.
If I put my hand in front of the lens, that's fine.
Yeah, but then you can't be part of the discussion.
So why are you imposing yourself? Why are you imposing yourself on this conversation and behaving in this thuggish way?
That's not a thuggish way.
Yes, you are. You're sticking your hand in front of the camera. Shall we move away from this triggered salafist?
My name is Bilal. If I go to Germany, my name is Bilal. If I go to France, my name is Bilal. It doesn't change. That's a word. That's a word. It's a word.
So if I'm going to be taking
No, because you need. Right, fifth time now. Fifth time you're fool. Listen.
Can you give me time to speak?
Because I know what you're going to say.
You just called me a fool.
Yes, because you are being foolish. You are being
But I think it's foolish to follow a prophet that thinks he's demon possessed, and I'm giving you the opportunity to answer.
I'm trying to answer,
Why
but
you
you're
are
not
following a prophet that he's like admitted himself that he thinks he's demon possessed? Why are you following a prophet? Why are you following a prophet that admitted?
The way that the Dawah team works is they try to find people who are in isolation and draw them in. And they're not just doing it through argument, they're doing it through befriending as well.
doing it through logic as well, huh?
Yeah, they attempt to use logic, certainly. If you're going to stand in Speaker's Corner, brother, you can expect to get filmed.
But I don't want to be filmed, that's my right.
You can choose to put your hand up there, but what I'm saying is...
to film me. As a human being,
Yeah.
I can ask for somebody to take the camera out of my face.
Okay, well, I'll just talk to her then, and we'll just, yeah. So
I can talk as well because I speak as
then you can be filmed as well. Yes, you can. So yes, you can.
Really?
Yes. Yes, it's Speaker's Corner, mate.
So Speaker's Corner means filming corner too, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a public space, and legally that means that anyone can film you.
And I can ask him not to film
You can ask,
exactly, as I've done. And if I put my hand in front of the lens, that's fine.
Yeah, but then you can't be
Yeah.
part of the discussion.
So why are you imposing yourself? Why are you imposing yourself on this conversation and behaving in this thuggish way?
That's not a thuggish way.
Yes, you are. You're sticking your hand in front of the camera. Shall we move away from this triggered salafist? Yeah. Let's move away from this triggered salafist.
You do that.
I'll stand here and then yeah. So basically, you know, what I would suggest to you is, you know, make sure that you're not working in isolation here, that you are connected to a strong Christian community, one that is encouraging you in your faith, validating you in your faith, and helping you to grow in your faith. Because time and time again we see Christians come to the corner, and because they're coming here in isolation and they think they're some super Christian, that they haven't got people feeding into them and feeding their soul, that they have been led into error, and a few sadly, have been led out of it.
I've been here for 2 years already.
All right, fair enough. You're a veteran.
I just haven't
Fair enough. I didn't realise you were a veteran. So yeah.
I've already been chatting with someone.
No.
So I didn't want to, I wanted to congratulate you on that. For myself, because of what you told me.
Somebody.
And it was, it's a unique. Now, I don't know. I'm on the belief or understanding that I've been looking at the Islamic Heritage Cultural Centre, and I've had the
How do you explain it?
Surah 1930, I've made videos on that, so I'm on the level with that. But that was a unique.
Well, make sure that you're keeping digging into the word and understanding the scriptures as fully as can be. You know, and learning polemics. I'm just about to do a talk on apologetics and polemics right now, so I'm going to prepare for that, and then I'm going to be giving a talk about why Christians need to be doing apologetics. Anyway, sister, peace of the Lord be with you. Godspeed, and all the best.
So that sisters don't have to stand in water. So tell us a bit about why you're here. Like, you all look like you're part of the group.
So most of this group is from Houston, Texas, on a 2-week evangelism trip.
Okay.
Church called Faith Bridge. Myself and Ezra, we've seen you before. We worked for 6 weeks on a similar evangelism outreach.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah. How are you finding doing missionary work amongst the atheists of England?
Apathy, so much apathy.
It is.
Yeah,
it is apathy.
That's the hardest thing.
And would you say you understand where that apathy comes from?
Feeling like, I think that the time whenever people are most open is whenever they're not comfortable. Like they're not. I feel like people here just think they have it all together by themselves. You know?
Yeah.
They feel like they have all the answers.
It's the god of the self.
Yeah.
The Western world has fallen into a form of paganism. They worship themselves. And as Christians, we have to reject this god of self. We have to reject it by clearly understanding who we are as a people. Because as Christians, we are disciples of Christ and worshippers of the Yahweh, the one true God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And that means we have to clearly understand that we are not like those who are next to us. That we are a people set apart, a holy nation, a royal priesthood. That is what we are as a Christian community. And all too often, what we have become are polytheists in the sense that we mix our nationalism, our civic identity, with our Christian identity, as if these two things were compatible. Just relax, guys. There are some people here that have issues. Just no, don't laugh. It's not funny. But there are some people here with genuine health issues. So the point that I'm making to you is that as Christians, our identity is something separate from the civic nationalism that we were raised in. You pledge allegiance to the flag? I hope not. I hope you're not pledging allegiance to the flag. Because your only allegiance is to Christ. Your only allegiance is to his kingdom, not to the American state. My allegiance is not to the Queen, it's not to the United Kingdom, it's to the church, which means that my allegiance is to all of you, and all of you owe allegiance to me, because all of us are bondservants of the same Lord and the same King, Jesus Christ. And as people who are built upon the teachings of the prophets and the apostles, this is what our identity is. Our cause is the cause of Nigerian Christians who are being killed in Nigeria. Our cause is the cause of our Syrian brothers and sisters who are being persecuted in Iraq and in Syria. Our cause is with our Lebanese Christian brothers and sisters, with the Palestinian Christians, the Jewish Christians, the Serbian Christians, the Greek Orthodox. This is where our unity must lie. You're not being taught this into your churches, because many of the Western churches have been bowled over by the Enlightenment philosophies of the 1700s, when society reconstructed itself into a different way. As Christians, I say to you that the only way that we are going to change our situation around is when our faith means something to us. When it comes something that we're willing to live for, to fight for, and to die for. Because only when our faith is serious to us will other people take it seriously. Which means that all of us must commit ourselves to this one narrative, to see the church triumphant against all her enemies. Whether those enemies or Republicans on the right, or Democrats on the left. Our cause is the cause of the church, not of any nation state, not of any civic national duty, but of the church. So, any questions?
We gotta run that way.
Right, well, you have a great stay. It's good to see you. God bless. If you want to get in touch, you can get in touch through Soco Films. We're on Twitter. Peace be with you all. What kind of handshake are you doing? Peace be with you all. Peace be with you.
First Christians. I wrote a 25-page paper on don't pledge your allegiance to a country. You're actually one of the first people that's really affirmed that.
It's
so
absolutely
I
unbiblical.
appreciate that.
Pledging your allegiance to a nation state is totally unbiblical. Completely contrary to everything the apostles did.
I agree. So I appreciate it, man.
Yeah,
I love watching your
keep
stuff.
pushing it.
Love
Yeah, if you
seeing
want to
that.
help us share the videos, get in touch.
Absolutely.
God bless. Peace be with you. It's great to see brothers. It's great to see brothers who have got that passion enough to evangelize. And certainly the church needs to rediscover a missionary culture to challenge the kind of apathy that the Western church has fallen into. But evangelism and a passion for evangelism is not enough. We've got to know who we are as a people, and what our identity is built upon and structured upon. And without that understanding and without that connection to church history, we're not going to be able to stand up for ourselves. And we're not going to be able to discover that spirituality that can change the mess around that the West is falling into, that existential cliff that it is running so headlong over. The right wing don't have the answer, the left wing are clueless. It's only when we appeal to Christian wisdom and our Christian traditions that we can once again recover our identity.
Not me, but Christ in you, bro. Christ in you. You're a Christian yourself?
I am, yes.
Fantastic. You don't need to sort of tell anything if you think it's too personal, whereabouts, UK or elsewhere?
Oh, yeah, I'm based in the UK. I'm not in London, I'm north of London. I won't reveal the exact location.
Fair enough.
Yeah. I used to come here a lot when Jay Smith was down here.
Right.
About 2 years ago. So I've not really got married.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's a beautiful thing, and so much more important than a lot of these arguments that happen there.
Well, yes, but I mean, this is crucially important too.
Well, I think Speaker's Corner is one of those. It's become, because of all the cameras and YouTube, it's become one of those points of contact where the entire world can have a discourse and get involved in a discourse through the medium of YouTube and the videos that are produced. And so it's very much at the very front line of evangelism. The Islamic Dawah team know that, which is why they arrange for people who've already decided to become Muslim to come to the pod to give their shahada, so that it has a wider and greater impact. You know, and I think that the church needs to recognise that this is an important place for missionary work and for evangelism, and they need to be sending the right kind of Christians. Yeah, you know what I mean by the right kind of Christian.
I do.
Go on, explain what you think of it.
I mean, somebody who can defend their faith, basically.
Yeah.
But not only do the apologetics, do the polemics as well.
Yeah.
And I'm educated about Christianity. I've studied. I don't necessarily have the gift of debate that you have, so it's encouraging to see that there's people like you here who are standing up.
Yeah.
And so the Dawah team are not having it their own way, which sometimes in the past it felt like they were.
Yeah, they were being unchallenged. A lot of their mantras, rhetorics, and arguments, when you take them and reverse them and apply them to their own religion collapses. And we've seen that again and again in discussion and debate here. And we know that what we're doing is bearing fruit. So just this morning, a Somali girl who had already lost her faith in Islam, she'd become an agnostic long before she was ever in contact with me, has contacted me today to tell us that she's become a believer in Jesus. Now, I'm yet to find out what she means by that, however, one assumes that since she knows I'm a Christian and she's reached out to me to tell me that she must know, she must be thinking along those lines. So, our work is having fruit. And we know that lots of white working class lads are seeing that actually there is a way to live a life that is ordered, to live a life that is to the good, to live a life that is filled with spirituality, that isn't the wimpy thing that you find inside the Church of England. You know, and we've got lots of reports of people saying that they're reading the Bible, that they're studying the Christian faith, and they're reconsidering it. So, you know, the church needs to recognise that this is something important, and it needs to be getting the right kind of Christians down here, working in teams, supporting one another. And I would say that it's also about the follow-up as well. You know, there's no point coming down here and preaching like a lone crusader if A, you're not working in a team, and B, you're not seeking to do any follow-up with people. You know,
are you seeing an increase of more Christians coming down here to do apologetics and polemics since you started coming here?
People have commented in that direction, that there is a sort of Christian pushback at the corner from the domination that the Islamic Dawah team seek to have over this area. But we're still greatly outnumbered, and we're still on the back foot. And I think as the church needs to rethink how it's doing evangelism generally. Like, those that are evangelistically minded tend to understand that evangelism is about standing on a street corner and preaching to people. And I can't stress enough how bad that is a way of doing evangelism. So take this brother who's in the Texan hat right now. I suspect he's alienating the people that he's reaching. And Christians are so addicted to this idea of standing up and preaching boldly that we're no longer preaching with any wisdom. Because if you look, say, for example, how Muslims are doing dawah, they're not standing in street corners shouting at people. They're setting up booklet tables, they're talking with people, they're dealing with their questions, and then they're inviting them to get involved in a community. And then when they go to a mosque, they get love bombed. And we Christians are behind the scenes. We're behind the curve, because society has moved on to a commercialist structure. And people think as consumers. Whether that's a healthy way to think or not, that is how they think. So if you're preaching at people, the way that people hear that is that you're imposing your religion upon them, which of course you're not. They can obviously free to walk off. But if you want to engage people, you've got to talk to them.
I agree, yeah.
You know, and do the follow-up. And you've got to have a church community that if you took someone there who was an inquirer, they would be greeted with love and hospitality.
Yeah. I have to say, I've done and I do some street preaching.
Yeah.
I agree that there's ways of doing it that are wrong. If we just stand there and pour out judgment on people, I don't think that's I'm not sure that's a fruitful way of doing it. I think even in our preaching, we can demonstrate the love of Christ. People need to know that they're sinners who need a Saviour, they need Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
That's the central core of the message, but I think there is a way of doing it without just hell and fire and brimstone.
Yeah, I think part of the reason why lots of Christians end up preaching in the way that they do is because no one has just sort of stood back and gone, how many people are you alienating and how many people are you connecting with? The point about preaching is that it requires people to listen but not engage. And the point of dialogue is that it is all about engagement. And we live in a world now where people receive truth through engagement. That's how you do it at school. Teachers, you ask questions, the teacher explains. What the church is stuck to is a style of evangelism that's rooted in the 1700s, when public speaking was a form of entertainment. But public speaking is not any longer a form of entertainment. Speaker's Corner is an exception to that. It is a quirk of our society. It isn't the norm. So the church needs to, those that are evangelistically minded need to band together and adapt their style of evangelism appropriate to the culture. When we send missionaries abroad, that's exactly what we expect them to do. well, since this is a post-Christian society, why are we not behaving like missionaries? And adapting our style of evangelism to the culture that we're evangelizing.
I agree. You know, there's definitely a place. As I said, I do the open air preaching, and I've seen fruit from it. But as well, I think it can be done in the wrong way, and I hope I don't do it that way. But who knows? The Lord knows.
So, and we'll end on this question because I think we've said everything that there needs to be said about it. As someone who's an experienced street preacher, what would you say are some of the worst examples of street preaching that you've seen? The kind of thing that when you've seen it on the street, it's made you go, oh gosh, this is terrible.
I think it's condemning everybody's lifestyle without telling them the central message. So people don't necessarily know that in God's eyes there's certain behaviours that are wrong. They just think the way our culture thinks. So if you stand up and say, well, don't do this, don't do that, they just think you are just condemning them. You're just standing there in judgment of them. So my approach would be the fact that I'm a sinner too. We all are sinners. None of us lives up to God's standard. So I try not to stand there and point at other people's faults. I acknowledge that we're all in the same boat, but for the grace of Jesus Christ. So yeah, to answer your question, it's just standing there and preaching judgment and damnation on everybody else without an acknowledgement that we're no better off apart from Christ. I think that's the core.
You see, I would say to you that most street preachers try to do what you're doing. But what I see when I see street preachers is I see lots of people walking past them. Very few, if anyone, listening to them. And what they're doing is they're making a gut reaction based upon the feeling that they get as they walk past this preacher who's shouting and bawling. And what I would encourage you and every other brother who's really interested in evangelism to do is to take your evangelism and to do it in a way that's appropriate to a consumer society. Go buy Christian books from somewhere like CLC or some other kind of Christian bookshop or Truth Society, and then give those books away as you speak to people, and then seek to do follow-up with those people. And you need to make sure that your church is in such a place that if you were to bring someone back to your church, they would be love-bombed. Whereas what tends to happen is a new person walks into a church, and churches now have become so accustomed, lots of them, to people not walking through the door, that they tend to ignore the newcomer. And that is not an example of Abrahamic hospitality at all. Anyway, brother, all the best in what you're doing. God bless and peace be with you.